Welcome to the first lecture in Module 2. In this lecture, we'll provide an overview of Rails. As we've already mentioned, Rails is a software framework for building web applications that's built on top of the Ruby programming language. Now, the license that accompanies Rails is the open source MIT license. This license is one of the least restrictive licenses available for open source. Basically, all you need to do is preserve copyright and permission notices with the Rails source code. Rails provides a full stack from the back-end data store to the front-end presentation and everything in between. A lot of what we'll do in this course involves understanding all of those pieces in between. It was released in 2004 and it's been rapidly evolving. It seems that every year there's another version of Rails that's released. Some of the sites that use Rails include Twitter, Hulu, and GitHub is a site that we'll use extensively in this class. As I've already mentioned, Rails is a Ruby gem. In other words, it's a package that's built on top of the Ruby programming language. And it includes an extensive set of code generators, testing scripts, and all sorts of other automated features that you need to learn how to use. It has a suite of additional tools that you can use to help develop your web applications. One of these is Rake, which stands for Ruby Make. And this is a utility that you use to migrate databases, clear web sessions, and do these types of things. We'll use this extensively in the course. It comes with a web server called WebRick. It's built-in SQLite database support, and SQLite is a very simple database system that's file-based. When you go to deploy a web application, this is not an industrial-strength database, but it's perfect for development. When you go to deploy a web application, you'll typically use something like MySQL or a Postgres production database. And then it has Rack middleware. These are just standardized interfaces for interacting between your web server and the web application. Rails makes extensive use of the model view controller design pattern. And to understand where that fits in, let's take another look at the canonical Web 2.0 and 3.0 architecture. And that's shown on top here. Underneath that, I'm showing again the 6-tier architecture design pattern that we discussed previously. And the model view controller design pattern is used to help organize the presentation logic tier, the business logic tier, and the data access tier. Now, what are some of the criticisms associated with Rails? Well, there was a high-profile failure at Twitter, and because of that, it was said that maybe perhaps Rails doesn't scale as it should. It turns out that the architect who built this Twitter application did not fault Rails for that, that it was a horizontal scaling problem that would have happened for any programming language. Another criticism you hear is that it's magic. There's all of these code generators that you're using, and you don't really know what's going on under the hood, and that can be a problem. Here's my answer. This is all part of the natural progression of programming since the beginning of programming. Recall in a previous lecture where I showed you the timeline associated with computing. And in 1946, the ENIAC computer was created, and this is it. Let's take a look at this picture. All those patch cords and those people in the room, they're programming. And those patch cords, that's how they're programming. They're having to move patch cords around in order to program this machine. This is a wonderful picture. Take a look at the air conditioning up top and how it's plugged in up top as well. It's a very interesting classic picture of the ENIAC architecture. If you think about what was happening there, they're programming bits. They're having to move those patch cords around in order to make a program work. Well, one of the first improvements was to, instead of manipulating bits, let's capture our programming as an assembly code. And so what happens is this assembly language code mapped to mini machine instructions, which is where those bits. Later on, high-level programming languages were created. And even in that time, it was very difficult. People, during the time of the invention of these high-level programming languages like Fortran, folks will complain saying, well, I don't know what's going on under the hood in that case either. You're starting to lose something. You're gaining productivity, but you're losing your ability to control some of the fine details. But programmers became more productive as they had high-level programming languages made available to them. Object-oriented programming was the next step in this progression. And again, the same criticisms were made. After that, we have frameworks, and that's what we're using in this course, an entire web application framework. So there's a trade-off here. You can be a lot more productive in terms of the ability to create code, but you're losing your ability to really understand what's going on at a very deep level in the machine. Here's a quote I like that talks about this particular point. And this is actually from the inventor of Rails, David Heinemeier Hansson. And he said that the whole point is that the cost per request is plummeting, but the cost of programming is not. Thus, we have to find ways to trade efficiency in the runtime for efficiency in thought time in order to make the development of applications cheaper. Now, I've believed we've long since entered the age where simplicity of development and maintenance is where the real value lies. In other words, what this quote is saying is that there's a trade-off. It's the same trade-off that I've already discussed. A programmer's time is worth a lot of money. If you can learn how to develop these Rails applications, that's a real value, and people are willing to pay a lot of money for that talent. Rather than spending your time trying to manipulate bits, people want these web applications created at a rapid pace, and so that's the trade-off here. So in the next lecture, we're going to start to learn how to use the Ruby on Rails environment, and so this completes the first lecture in Module 2.